So we're going to start with attics and crawl spaces. And so one of the first things they want to do, and so you can kind of follow along with the home energy checklist that's in your hand right now. But what they want to do is to look at their attic insulation. Is it uniform? And are there areas where there's too much or too little insulation? And generally speaking, if you only have 6 to 8, you don't have enough. You want to try and have about 14 or 16 inches of insulation in your attic. And you can see in this picture there that what they've got probably some existing insulation that was in there, and now they're adding other types of insulation over top of it. So in this case, they're adding fiberglass insulation, but in general, experts feel that cellulose insulation is probably, for multiple reasons, the better of the types of insulation. And before you insulate, one of the things that the professionals do is they sometimes in older homes, they will take out all of the insulation because, and I want you to watch where my mouse is going here. You see this little area here? This is in an attic with no insulation. And see this area right here? That's a hole that goes down into the conditioned area where it's trying to be cooled or heated in the summer and winter time. And so this is one of those areas that is a culprit that you can find in your attic that you want to look for in the attic space. Now here's an attic fan that's up there, and what you probably want to do, and we'll see an example of it later on, but you probably want to take some styrofoam or some lumber or something and make a dam around the perimeter of this attic fan so that when they put in their insulation, that it doesn't fall down into the attic fan. It can go right up against the side of it. And then this is showing an area where there's a kind of a channel or a chase that goes down into the house. And this is a huge place where cold air can come into the house. So these are the types of things you discover when you get into your attic and look around. And you need to be very careful because you got to walk on the ceiling joist, because if you don't, you're going to put your foot right through the ceiling down below. Here's where a plumbing pipe is going to go through. And back when they build these houses, energy wasn't as much of a topic as it is today. And so they just cut a hole and ran a pipe down there. This is like a 4-inch vent stack pipe probably that goes down. And here is a great place for cold to just dive into the home. We're in an attic now again, still, and we are looking at a ceiling fixture. And so when you have the opportunity, this is a foam gun, but you can use cans of foam, which would work just fine. Now this is a professional, so he's got more fancy equipment that he uses to inject foam where he needs it. But certainly cans of foam, great stuff that you can get at the hardware store, works just as well. Now there's also places in the attic where there may not be any insulation. Like we're in the attic now, and on the other side of this wall is living space, and there's absolutely no insulation there. So this is something on the checklist that as you're going through, that you can say, well, let's see, here's a vertical wall in the attic space, and I know my bedroom's right on the other side, and there's absolutely no insulation. No wonder that room is cold or hot. Now, another thing to be watching for when you're in the attic is attic ventilation. And you have soffit vents, which are down low in the attic, that you can see when you're on the ground looking up from the outside. And then you have upper vents, so that in the summertime, your attic is that all the hot air that's in the attic can have a way to move out. But what we see here is that over time, or maybe with a bad installer, the insulation is covering up the soffit vent that's at the bottom of this insulation here. Another thing to look for are ducts in unconditioned spaces, and whether it's a return duct or a supply duct, this is a place where hot air in the summertime or cold air in the wintertime gets right into your ventilation system, your HVAC system and causes real energy problems. Another thing to look for is the ductwork in your attic space, where it's been trampled on over time. Somebody got up there, a contractor or a homeowner, and stepped on it. So, you know, the room that's being supplied by this flex duct is not getting their fair share of energy right now. And so what you can use is silver tape to get in there and shore up some of these areas. Either you can do it or a professional can do it, but there's specific types of tape, and it's typically silver tape. You know, they used to call gray tape duct tape. Well, this stuff is better than that, this silver tape, and so whenever you can, you want to try and use that. Now, another thing to look for when you're roaming around in your attic space are recessed can lights. Recessed can lights are required by code not to have insulation around them, because especially when they used the old style bulbs, the incandescent bulbs would get very hot to the touch. That's because it's creating heat, costs more energy. Fluorescent bulbs, CFLs, compact fluorescent light bulbs don't get nearly as hot, and certainly in general you want to take every light bulb in your house and that's not a fluorescent and throw it away and start using compact fluorescent light bulbs. But here is an example of all these little holes here are places where the heat just goes right up into the attic and out. Now there's things you can do for that that we'll see here in a second, but here's another compact or a recessed light fixture that they haven't done a good job of keeping insulation away from it, and that could present a fire hazard right there. The question was, when should we use incandescent bulbs versus fluorescent bulbs? You should always use a CFL in any time of year, because that is a very expensive type of heat. That is a form of heat in the wintertime, but it's a very expensive form of heat. It's like turning on your stove, your electric stove, and letting that heat the room. You're much better off to let your furnace do the heating and cooling. Yeah. And then another place where you can lose lots of heat is in your attic access doors and hatches. You can see here that this is a drop-down ladder that comes out of the ceiling, and they've got it set up so that when it's in its up position, that this little piece of weather stripping right here is pressing up against this. There's a cap on it here that has weather stripping here and here, so that what you've created is an airtight, more of an airtight system. It takes kind of a handyman to be able to do some of this stuff, but that's just another area where people need to be watching and see, when they're doing their checklist, where are the culprits in my house that are costing me energy. Here is an attic access, and you can see there's the spring right over here where it's lowered down. And what they've done here is use just a couple inches of rigid blue styrofoam insulation, and they've caulked it with that foam caulk, those cans of foam, like great stuff, so that when they add insulation, that they can get a higher level of insulation without it falling down into the stairway every time they open up to get into the attic to check something out.